Christian Circle podcast, and you're listening to Pamela Fernandes, where we have conversations about Christian living. Here's the show. Hello, everyone. We have a new podcast this month for the month of March, and I know that we didn't have one for February, even though we recorded one, and somehow the recording didn't go through. We had some trouble with the software, and so this month we've got a wonderful podcast. We've really taken the time to write to people and get in a wonderful podcast for Lent. But before we go into the podcast, a number of things. Firstly, we are now on tunein.com. So earlier we were on iTunes, we were on Stitcher, we were on I believe SoundCloud. So we're actually on every digital radio station out there, and that means that you can access us from any part of the world. Now, if you have a particular podcasting website or a particular digital station that you use more often and you would like us to be there, then write into me and I should be able to send in the RSS feeds there as well, because right now we're on every major network possible. So that's a big milestone, because tunein.com really curates a lot of material, and for us to be there as well, I think it's a big thing. Secondly, we're doing giveaways. I know that the last few months the giveaways didn't really happen, but we're doing the giveaways, and we're going to give you gifts from our merchandise as well, because a few people wrote in and said that they don't want books and they don't want CDs, and we have so many books to give away. So we're shifting to merchandise. We might do books as well, but look at the website. That's PamelaQFernandes.com. We're setting up the raffle copter, and there should be one giveaway a month for whoever participates. It's not going to be very complicated. And the third bit of good news is that 10 Reminders for the Single Christian Woman has a face. Yes, we have a cover for the book, and we're looking at a pub date of, I think, June, mid-June somewhere, or the end of June. So we've actually started working quite seriously on a lot of aspects, book trailers, and the editor. We've got a wonderful editor who's come on board. So a number of good things there. And now we go straight to the podcast, and it's all about Lent, where Stephen Spillane tells you to be different.
So my name is Stephen. I'm from Cork in Ireland. I'm an Anglican, but I was raised Roman Catholic. I'm a lay assistant at the Eucharist, and I represent my parish, which is St. Anne's Shandon, and Diocesan Synod. I also help with teaching of the confirmation class and things like various other things in the parish like that. Regular attendance, attender in St. Anne's and in the local cathedral for morning prayer on my days off.
So I saw your post at the beginning of this month on Lent, and I really enjoyed reading it. But I wanted to understand, what was the thought process you had before, while you were making that list?
Yeah, so I suppose I was thinking of Lent, and we had started this year in Advent in my own church, and we had a parish reflection evening, and that had gotten me thinking of, these seasons of the church are an opportunity for us to do something different, to engage more with our faith. And I was thinking back to, what I'd done in the past for Lent and what we would have been encouraged to do at school, which would have been to give things up, like to give up sweets, give up chocolate, give up crisps and all these type of things. So I was thinking, and over the last few years I've had the opinion that you shouldn't really give up something for Lent, that you should actually take something up, whether it would be to read a book or to do something like that, or a course or a Bible study or something like that. So I went away and I looked and I said, okay, what is actually out there? What ideas are there? And so I said I'd make a little list, and it's, as usual, after I made the list I found loads of other things, which is always the way when you write a list. You find 5 more things, but still, it got really good feedback. It actually formed the basis for part of our parish Lenten reflection as well, which was really cool as well. So I got to give that. So I was really happy with that.
So, but it also means that before you start Lent, there's some preparation to it, right? It's not like you just wake up on Ash Wednesday and you say, okay, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. So
Yes, I think that should be the way with it. With anything, it's like, for me, a church season, it's like a holiday. You don't wake up on the morning of your flight going, right, I need to pack, I need to start my passport. You know, we should have kind of that kind of mentality. Or even with Christmas, we don't wake up on Christmas morning saying we have to wrap the presents or buy the presents. You know, we do kind of need to prepare ourselves. And Lent is a long season. And, you know, it's 40 odd days if you go by the actual calendar and add in Sundays and all the rest of it. And it is a prayerful time, and you can't rush into that. You kind of have to build up to it and prepare yourself and just have the resources that you need, and the support network, especially if you're doing something new. Because if you're not used to, say, prayer or on a daily basis and or, you know, sitting quietly, that can be quite difficult. And I think it's good to know people who do it or have done it, and so you can either, you know, follow their recommendations for books that can help, or just sit and talk with them and listen to their advice. I think that's kind of important.
How does somebody go about making this list for themselves? Like, I know that you've made this list, and we're going to talk about your list in detail. But how does somebody go about making their own list, like personalizing it to themselves?
I suppose it comes down to where your interests are. Like, what I did is like, what are the things I would like to do in terms of challenging or learning about my own faith. So reading a book is, I find, one of the best ways to learn. So that's why the first one on my list was to read a book. When it came to, I know not everyone has the time to do that. So it's looking at the time that you have to give to something. Like, if you have a big family, or it's a busy family between work, kids, the whole lot, you know, having even 10 minutes to yourself can be quite difficult. So again, it's about being realistic about the time that you have to give to taking up something. So that's where I came to looking at the idea of the email courses. You know, and like this, and as usual, I wrote about one and I found about 5 more afterwards. But because the internet is fantastic, there's so much stuff out there, you know, that you can do. And like, I'm sure, like, I'm being from Ireland, you know, I'm Church of Ireland, but like, it's quite easy for me to dip into the Church of England stuff. And having been raised Roman Catholic, there's still a few Catholic things, you know, so it's interesting how you do use it to form your own personal theology and how it works for you. For others, then it's the charity type of campaigns. It's like, okay, how can I help make a difference in the world? Is it by volunteering my time, or is it by doing something like Count Your Blessings, you know, learning about what's going on in the world that mightn't be on the news every day? And supporting a charity that you like. Or here in Ireland as well, we've got Trócaire, and they do a Lenten campaign as well, and it's about when you do something that you know you shouldn't have, whether it's, for example, swearing or whatever, you know, you put the money in the box to give to charity. So it's a nice little way of doing it, that it's not something that needs to take up a whole lot of time, but it's doing something different for those 40 days. You know, for me, it's grand. I'm single. I can do what I want with work. But if I have a few days off together, you know, I can head away on a retreat, or I go to a monastery or something like that, just to be. And I think that's, to me, I think is an important part of Lent as well, is give us all permission to be, whether it's at 10 minutes a day, or even if it's 15 minutes on a Sunday when everyone else is getting ready to go visit Granny or something, that you take those 15 minutes and it's like, okay, let's reflect, let's see where we are, let's see, you know, where am I? And it can be difficult to timetable it, but it is important that we do it. And I think Lent, again, Lent is a great excuse. It's that opportunity to kind of do something different. And if someone says to you, oh, why are you doing that? You can go, oh, I'm doing this for Lent. And everyone goes, oh, okay. You know,
it's like, there's to be different.
exactly. People expect you to do something slightly different during Lent. They're like, oh, no, that makes sense, yeah. There's no ulterior motives. There's no double questioning. It's like, oh, no, that's great, yeah. Why not?
So the first part of your list was reading a book. Now, there are lots of books out there. There are so many things that people can read. Now, how does
There
somebody
is.
tailor the books that they feel would help them, on this Lenten journey? Like, how do you pick the things that you want to read?
Well, for me, the first one that I picked was actually the one written by the Archbishop of Canterbury, but specifically for Lent. So, there's a bit of a theme there, but it's on money
Okay.
and how today in this materialistic society, how we can use money to serve grace so that we don't become fully involved in this money issue and storing the treasures that we can't take to the next life, but at the same time having enough that we focus on what we have, in a sense that we use that to move forward and to live our lives. I've only started it. Well, it's a good bit into chapter 1, and it is fantastic.
Okay.
The introduction alone, I think, I was glad I picked it. He has this fantastic view on the parable of the great the merchant with the great pearl. The merchant who sells everything for the pearl. And I'm not going to spoil it for anyone listening, but it is worth reading just for that. And it's a fantastic book. And the other book then that I kind of chose to focus on was, which I will hopefully get to read by the time I finish Dethroning Mammon, is The Day the Revolution Began, by Tom Wright. So I picked this one because, again, it was on the crucifixion, this event that we're building up to.
Okay.
And I think sometimes we can focus too much on Easter, and sometimes we focus too much on Lent. And you can't have Lent without Easter, you can't have Easter without Lent.
Yeah.
So I think we need to remember that it is a journey and that we're moving towards this end point. And for me, personally, I kind of was a bit afraid of the cross and what it meant. And, so this is a way for me to engage with that.
And a lot of people, I think, don't want to talk about the cross, right, or the crucifixion. I mean, they're an Easter people, but they will not talk about the sacrifice or the
exactly.
Yeah.
It's so true, and it's something that we kind of acknowledge it. We say, yeah, it happened, but we don't want to focus on it. We don't want to. We can ignore all that nastiness, that sadness, that bitterness, that must have been going through the apostles and the followers of Christ, as they it was the end of their world as they could see it on Good Friday, and how then Easter Sunday we go back to normal. Well, in reality, for them, Easter Sunday was this huge revelation, this wonderful thing, how that power of the cross was suddenly powerless. It was, and I think with this book I might have that opportunity to actually engage with my own thought processes on it and learn and explore that.
So you would say that depending on what you think you want to learn, you pick up the books based on what you want to grow in, the area that you feel is where you want to learn or grow, right?
Exactly. Like a book I found after I had written this list, as usual, and I'm absolutely loving. It's a beautiful little book by John Pritchard, and it's actually called The Journey.
Okay.
And it's the journey with Jesus to Jerusalem and the cross. It's a beautiful Lent book. There's just there's a piece for every day, Monday to Friday, and then a poem on a Saturday. But it takes a part of Luke's Gospel, which you read, and then he has written it from the point of view of John, the Apostle John, the youngest of them. And it gives what he thinks he might have been saying about it and his view on it. And it's utterly fantastic, and it just follows the story. And you can see as it's going on, we've completed kind of a week and a half of Lent, and you can feel the nervousness as you're approaching Jerusalem, and it's a total different way of looking at it. And it's not on the list in the article that I wrote, but it's certainly one that if I'm writing something similar for next year, this will be on the list.
Okay. So the other two things that you put on your list was online courses and Lenten study courses, right?
Yeah.
How do you think people should go about doing these courses? Because I find a lot of people do the course and then there's nothing really learned there. I mean, they're just doing one course after the other, year after year. So tell
Yeah.
us a little about that. Yeah.
Well, most of the courses I've done online, I've done through the Church Army, and they're an evangelical group in the UK and Ireland. They are absolutely fantastic. When you sign up for one of their courses, you can sign up to be a member, which is free. And they go from right at the beginning, like of someone's faith, with a course called Now a Christian. And they go on and they, like this every Lent, I think this is their second Lent, doing being salt and light, based on Matthew 5:13-16. It's a fantastic little course, and it's practical. It's saying, okay, here's a reflection. Here are 2 things you can do. So it's not just about reading or learning that way, but it's doing the learning. For example, last week it was about the neighborhood and kind of things like that. So one of the suggestions was to bake cookies and call into your next door neighbours just because. Another idea was to put extra food into your slow cooker on the Sunday before going to church and invite someone back for dinner. Very simple things, but something that we don't do to create that church community, because our lives are so busy and we're so disconnected, yes, so interconnected, that we don't sometimes see the people that are actually in front of us that actually need that companionship and that they need that fellowship. So email courses can be good when they have the practical side of it. And I think it's to find a course like that.
I find that this is the way we probably should be living. But we're doing this only for Lent. But this kind of community fellowship and stuff is how we should actually be even outside of Lent, right?
Oh, definitely. And you see, Lent is a great time because it's so long, 40 days. It's a great way to pick up a habit.
Yeah.
Because they say it takes 3 weeks to break a habit.
Yeah.
So sure, if you keep doing something for 3 weeks, you'll take it up as a habit.
Yeah.
So we're doing this for longer than 3 weeks. So, this is something that we can do, and it's brilliant, and it's as you say, it's that way of creating that community and that fellowship and that support network of faith that many of us lack, because we're afraid to talk about it in public. Because to me now, it seems to be of faith is nearly to be countercultural.
Yeah.
It's not. It's now the alternative. To being the mainstream. While many may say they are Christian or they have faith, they don't really do a whole lot about it. It's there. It's in the background. They make the odd nod at it, possibly at Easter and Christmas.
Yeah.
But it's what happens in between those times is when the church community is there and is living and it's supporting its members as people and as church. And I think that's really important.
So the other thing that you also mentioned was about charity. Now I just want a lot of people don't really believe in this, and that's why I want you to talk about it a little more. Why is this so important? Why is alms giving and charity, all of this, so important? Why is it one of the pillars of our Lenten mission?
I think it is. It's definitely one of the pillars, because I was reading a fantastic thing about Lent, and it was giving me a few ideas what to do, and one of the ideas was give things away. That included money, it included belongings, because it made the point, there's never a good time to give away money. If there's someone on the street collecting something, you have €5 in your pocket, and you're going, I could put those €5 or $5 or whatever in the collection bucket, or I can get a coffee. But you have to weigh up, that €5 is probably worth more to that charity, because they can do more with it than what I could with that coffee. So I think it's about just being aware of the different small amounts. I'm not saying, and I don't think anyone in today's church is advocating selling all your possessions and living the life like that. But I think it is something that we can do, and we can make a difference in the world, even in these small little ways. Mm-hmm. For example, the Count Your Blessings. That I'm doing, that I mentioned in the post, they every day, not every day, but some days they suggest just small things. For example, during last week it was give 10 cents for every time you turn on a tap, and it's just something very simple. Number one, you're aware of how often you use running water.
Yeah.
And two, you're kind of going, it's probably less than 10 times in the day that you do. So in the end of the day, you're giving it €1.
Yeah.
So that's not a whole lot out of my pocket. So it's like, no, I can do that. And it's about managed giving. And I think organizations such as Christian Aid, Trócaire, who are doing amazing work in the developing world, in Africa, where they're facing massive starvation and famine at the moment. You know, we are in such a privileged position that I don't think we can afford to, as human beings, let alone as Christians, not to give.
As a counter to that, a lot of people would just take their extra money and put it again back into Sunday Mass and then forget all about it. What is this of charity compared to, the spirit of the law versus just doing it for the heck of doing it? So
yes, it's to do it without no one else knowing, and I think that's important. And I think a lot of churches will have an extra collection for a charity during again, to do it. And I think again it's one of those things that we shouldn't be self-conscious, nor should we be praising ourselves and others for doing it. Like I love doing it myself, and I talk about it when I write or when I'm talking to someone like yourself. But it's not something I post about every day on Facebook or Twitter or one of these things. It's like, no, it's just lovely, and sometimes it just puts a thought in my head, and I'm like, actually, that's a good idea. That's something that maybe I should keep doing as a habit, like such as counting how many times I turn on the water so that I'm actually aware of how much water I'm using, and things like that. That'll actually not only benefit someone else, but also making sure that we're stewards of the world, because that's what we are called to be. And I think this is where a charity campaign or supporting a charity during Lent can actually work in so many different ways. It can be helping change you as a person, opening your eyes to the other, to the global neighbour that we all have. And it's just one of those wonderful things that we can do to change our own habits to actually save the world. As in terms of with climate change and all these things that are happening throughout the world, there was a fantastic letter by the moderator of the Church of South India on water and how scarce a resource it is in our world, and in places like India and Africa, it is going to be so precious.
Quite precious. I'm sorry to cut you, but in India, a lot of people don't even have access to water 24 hours a day. I mean, they get ration water for like 3 or 4 hours, and then they collect what they have to, and then they use that for the day. So we're really lucky that we have water,
Exactly, and it's things like that, and it's being aware of that, and kind of wondering, okay, what can I change in my life to try to make that easier for everyone else, and to be an example, but not an example that shouts it from the rooftop, but that quiet example that of when someone asks, oh, who's he? Oh, he's a really good person. He lives a good life, but there's no exact detail. It's kind of like, he does it for good reasons, if they see someone doing something a bit different to everyone else.
The last bit that was on your list was going on a retreat. Now, I know that a lot of people don't have the access to go on a retreat. But, what do you think are the advantages of going? I mean, I'm sure you've been to many, but what is the real advantage of going to a retreat?
For me, the advantage is it's a complete break with routine. You can't do what you do at home.
Yeah.
You're in a different place. For example, my main experiences have been in Glenstall Abbey. It's a place very close to my heart in Limerick, and it's a Benedictine monastery, and they are just wonderful there. They take people of all faiths and none, and it is just this. They have a wonderful rhythm to the day of prayer, and I think that's challenging to someone like myself who comes from, I pray in the morning on the bus to work, and then that's it. Or I go to morning prayer on my day off, and that's kind of it for the rest of the day. So it's challenging there because you're no longer working on a time frame of, okay, getting up at this time, have to be here at that time, then lunch, then meeting that person, and then home for dinner, and then maybe out for drinks with friends. Here it's not like that. It's breakfast is after morning prayer. Then you have free time to do walking or reading or whatever. Then you have Mass, and then you have lunch after Mass. And then you have Vespers, with supper after that, and then your compline. So it's a total different structure. So it's giving you that opportunity, and with the time in between the services, to actually stop and just think and actually like engage with a book or engage with nature. A lot of these monasteries are in beautiful parts of the world. I've seen pictures of wonderful ones, like of Coptic monasteries, of Orthodox, and they look like amazing places. And it's just that ability to be able to, these places give you permission to stop, to not worry, to not be continually going on social media, oh, what should I be doing now? What, you know, I need to take a picture of my lunch for Instagram. I need to do, you know, it's running at a complete different speed to the rest of the world, and it's just utterly fantastic.
Doesn't it make you realize that you don't actually need all of this other stuff, and that you have too much stuff going on in your life that's unnecessary?
I agree 100%, but yet when I come back, I'm still loving all that extra stuff. It is nice to have that to remind you every now and then, and I think that that's important as well. That, you know, okay, don't take all this for granted. Yeah. Acknowledge its privilege, and you know it is there, and you know prayer, whether as meditation or as you know, as part of Mass or Eucharist or whatever you do in your own faith, it's a wonderful experience, and actually sharing that with others. You see, this is the thing with a retreat as well, is you're engaging with others. Some who might be new to faith, others who might be struggling in faith, others who are very confident and needing a break from parish life. Mm-hmm. I've been very lucky with who I've met on retreats, a range of faiths, Unitarian, Methodist, evangelical Christians, you know, all in this one place. Mm-hmm. And you know, lay and ordained, and it's just this wonderful experience, because you stay up late in the night drinking tea and having these wonderful discussions and learning from each other about our faiths, and often from engagements like that you actually end up learning more about your own faith, because you're actually challenged nicely to what you believe yourself.
Apart from that, is there teaching? Is there, apart from this discussions, are there lectures, or what goes on at these retreats?
It depends on the retreat that you go on. Any of the ones I have gone on haven't featured anything like that. It's been very much, I do my own thing in between the services. But you can go on ones with themes that they might look at ways of praying, or they might be looking at, for example, Lenten retreats. So they look at the message of Lent and prepare you for Easter and the message that brings. And I think that's important as well. It's a case of finding it. For me, it's just never worked out with timing, that I'm actually free those weekends, and I do prefer the unstructured ones, because it does break that where I have to be at certain times, but at the same time, that sounds like hell to somebody else, and it probably does, and that they like the idea of having that opportunity to learn from someone else in a structured environment. They're fantastic ones. But even outside of that, during Lent often, I know Glenstal do Lenten lectures on Sundays, and I'm sure many monasteries do that on a Sunday, or the Dominican Priory here in Cork, they have one on a Monday evening. They do it, but they do that all year round, which is wonderful. They have talks on various subjects, which is a fantastic idea, and it's that great way to learn with others, as much as we can learn from a book. As we were talking about earlier, it's great to be able to read, whether it's the Bible or a book on faith, and actually then be able to discuss it and learn more that way.
So, do you have any last bits of advice, like for somebody, to have a good Lent? I mean, we're already like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Over. Some advice for these people.
My advice would be to challenge yourself, to do something slightly different, to give yourself permission to do something different. Whether it's to give yourself that permission to take the 15 minutes at the end of a busy week, or at another time, every day if you can, or whatever, but giving yourself that permission to be, and whether that being involves reading a book, reading an email, a daily email from an email study course, or or just going in the car and going for a drive somewhere to be, whether it be a place with a beautiful view or a monastery or whatever, but it's where you can be and be alone with God. And I think that's important.
So tell us a little about where we can find you. I mean, people would like to read more or...
So I mainly write on spiritualityireland.org, which is a website myself and a few friends set up a few years ago with Danny and Cleo, and we've gotten a great range of people to contribute across the many faiths and spiritualities that exist in our world, and we have people posting from all over the world. I obviously, when I'm posting, I focus mainly on Christianity and kind of what I know from the Anglican and the Episcopal churches, the odd time Roman Catholicism when it's something that interests me. But that's where I mainly can be found. And I have another blog as well, which does politics. So, which is quite interesting. My two favourite subjects are the two things you're not supposed to talk about in polite conversation. So you can find that one on stephenspillane.com.
And are you, I hate to do this during Lent, but are you on Twitter and Facebook?
Oh, I am. I'm not one of these people that keep things up during Lent. So you can find me on Facebook with Stephen Spillane, that's Stephen with a PH. And on Twitter, I am at Spiller2, just the number 2.
So thank you so much for yes to this podcast.
Yes, it is. And thank you for contacting me. When I saw your email asking, there was a massive smile on my face. So thank you for asking. I'm always happy to do it.
If you'd like to get in touch with me, you could tweet me at Pamela Q Phones. I'm also on Facebook at Pamela Q Fernandes. So see you next time. Until then, God bless and take care.